Watch out, Captain. I'm done! You dare die on me!
Security threat eliminated.
Captain, could I have a moment of your time? Ah! All right. You're a deft hand with a mag pick. Better show me how you did that. This is like a bad dream I once had. Down! Still got it!
The captain's here. Let's go. I want to see all of you busting ass.
For that. Let's go! Captain! Good hit! No! Oh! Take him down! Captain, I was hoping for a word.
Yeah, boss? Yeah, boss?
Anyone with eyes to see would not be shocked to hear them choosing to save themselves and their families and friends at the expense of... Your ability... Any... That's... I would... The answers to these questions don't really... The plan is not one region. Some choice... Hey.
Everyone all right?
Well, look who it is. I'll be damned. I was prepping the studio for our announcement, and I see you've brought the kid along. Babysitters may be expensive.
Yeah, keep talking, pal.
And the convicts.
Oh, I would go anywhere to see...
When you go off and get yourself shot. My word. You've correctly identified the most recognizable... It's a wonder what Phineas saw in you. Then again, he's an insane person. Yes, he is an extraordinarily obstinate fellow, isn't he? Fine, he isn't working for us per se. Semantics, he'll come around. But that's between us. As far as my adoring citizens will know, we've turned a dangerous crowd. Oh yes, go on, wake them up, add more mouths to feed. That'll solve our starvation. I don't know what half-baked plans that simpleton in a lab coat has been leading you through, but it's done. It's over. Let me ask you something, Captain.
I believe we could ask you the same.
I'm making actual progress towards stabilization and recovery. Oh, you are a captain of action. Now, look, I'm not an unreasonable man. I can't exactly afford more havoc than you've already caused.
Are you out of your mind? Rockwell's the biggest monster in Halcyon. You got any idea how many lives he's... I've had enough. You even think about cooperating with this animal? You're...
If you're gonna place more faith on this brat than the chairman of the fucking colony... I've got work to do.
Here they come! I was just getting started.
About a blasted lab coat.
I'm waiting for this! Out of ammo! Everything in my life has been leading up to this point. I believe I am ready for this. All right, boss. I'm ready. Let's do it.
Captain, you've disrupted the balance of power. You've upset the natural order of things. You've introduced... I'm afraid I can't do that. I'm aware of your diplomatic talents, Captain. You have a gift for manipulation, but I warn you, for all your talent, you make a nuance. Dr. Wells is being held in my custody. His cooperation will prove invaluable. Even all that's left to do is put down this riot, arrest you. Leaving. I had a feeling you'd say that. This prison... And don't worry. I will inform Dr. Wells that you died heroic.
Find another weapon! We're not getting through.
won't just die. Get me out of here!
You don't know how glad I am to see you. You did the right thing. Akande was a monster. Her death was much deserved, and long overdue. And you lunatic, you broke into the board's own fortress just to rescue one doddering old man. You are absolutely out of your mind, and I can't begin to thank you enough. I'm all right, thanks to you. Akande wanted my cooperation. I'm quite sure she would have beaten it out of me if you hadn't arrived. You've broken the board's stranglehold on this colony, and you saved my life. But there's still so much we have yet. You and I are going to have to work harder than ever to save Halcyon. Earth has gone dark. We haven't received a single message in 3 years. There's been no communication, no signals, nothing. 2 years ago, the Earth's Directorate's frigate disappeared on their way back to Earth. We don't know what they discovered when they arrived, or if they are...
Hold on, Doc. Are you telling me the Earth went dark 3 years ago, and the board's just been covering this up?
They've been incredibly effective at concealing the truth. Right now, the only people in the colony who know are standing in this room.
First the food supply, and now this. That's it. I'm done. There is no...
You're experiencing a crisis of faith, Preacher. Don't worry. We're in serious trouble, my friend. Do you know what this means for Halcyon? We can't rely on Earth for support anymore. We've been cut loose. Yes, you're right. The road... We must begin the revival process immediately, starting with the Hope's brightest minds, and then we're going to need a leader, and I can't imagine... I can't... We can't save Halcyon on our own. We're all going to have to... We are not a colony anymore. Our last connection to Earth has...
The OSI teaches that everything in the universe happens according to the grand plan. But the stranger that arrived in Halcyon was an unplanned variable. From the moment he landed in Emerald Vale, his actions altered the course of history. The events on Tartarus brought about the end of the board's authority. But the board's mistakes would haunt the colony for decades to come. The damage they left behind would require the work of a generation to repair. Dr. Phineas Wells began reviving a handful of the Hope's colonists. Engineers, scientists, technicians, and intellectuals. They were among the brightest minds the Earth had ever sent out into the stars. The Hope scientists and engineers woke up in a colony descending headlong into total collapse. With no way to return to Earth, they had no choice but to band together and devote themselves to the cause of saving Halcyon. The people of Halcyon were nothing if not hardy. In the absence of the board's authority, many of the colony's settlements banded together with a single purpose in mind: survival. Life was especially hard in the years to come. Some towns dissolved by attrition and starvation, but most of them found a way to carry on. In the years to come, Halcyon was forced to reckon with its newfound freedom. The board was gone, and for better or worse, the colony was responsible for its own destiny. As the colony struggled to survive, the inspirational story of the Iconoclast spread like wildfire. Zora's focus on logistics made for a safer monarch, where the Iconoclasts enjoyed a surge of new blood looking to join the ranks from struggling townships. Life on Monarch slowly improved from a desperate fight for survival to prosperous growth and more permanent strength. Sublight Salvage adapted to the changes in Halcyon, shifting their business model to suit the times. Their claims of legitimacy were scrutinized, but ultimately unquestioned. Lilia Hagen would continue to protect her family as ruthlessly as ever. The collapse of Edgewater left its workers bereft of any purpose in life. Most of them made their way to Adelaide McDevitt's camp, hoping to ingratiate themselves into her favor. Adelaide accepted only a few to her community. The rest were turned away and likely died of starvation. Nevertheless, Adelaide's camp grew into a well-established town. Adelaide McDevitt refused to cooperate with the ongoing effort to save Halcyon from collapse. A sympathetic deserter stole a copy of her research and delivered it to the Hope's scientists. It is unclear how useful Adelaide's research was. An optimistic estimate suggests her work may have bought Halcyon another few years of survival. Adelaide would never know. She died that winter. Under the leadership of Junlei Tennyson, the Groundbreaker held firm against corporate influence. The ship's mechanical stability gave Junlei the time to educate a promising generation of engineers, schooled in her family's traditions. The future of the Groundbreaker looks promising. The rediscovery of the Hope and the abandonment of the lifetime employment program forced Byzantium to come to terms with some uncomfortable realities about the state of Halcyon. While Byzantines were reluctant to surrender the luxuries they'd grown accustomed to, the board's diminished authority gave them little choice in the matter. Nearly everyone had to learn to make do with less. Some even had to get jobs. It was a dark time indeed. Life in Halcyon was sobering for Felix Millstone. The grand revolution he dreamed of never came. There was no great awakening for the colony, no celebrations in the streets. There was only the hard, desperate work of trying to repair a broken colony. Felix never had a head for numbers, but if there was labor to be done, he was there to help. Eventually, Felix realized that the work of a revolution was done with two hands. After all he'd seen and heard adventuring with you, the vicar Maximilian de Soto renounced his faith and joined the effort to rebuild the colony. Ironically, he finally found the joy that had eluded him over the course of his life, and realized that perhaps he was always meant to be just a simple laborer after all. He quickly dismissed the idea. Once the matter with the Hope colonists was resolved, Junlei bashfully asked Parvati if she'd like to join her permanently on the Groundbreaker, and Parvati enthusiastically, if somewhat awkwardly, agreed. The stories of her adventures spread across the colony, and Parvati soon found herself the center of attention. Having served as the engineer of a renowned spacecraft, tramp freighters and wildcat miners sought her out by name, and in no time, she was a fixture in the Groundbreaker's mechanical ecosystem. She and Junlei were never far apart. The SAM unit that accompanied you spread awareness of the product line's superior sanitation and maintenance capabilities across what was left of the colony. This led to a boost in SAM unit sales. Did you know that SAM units are the longest-lasting, toughest-acting cleaning solution in Halcyon? Though Minister Clark was eventually released from house arrest, long years of isolation left him a changed man, little suited for bureaucratic work or for the colony that was changing around him. He remained in his estate largely by choice, fading from public view. As for Dr. Phineas Wells, he spent his remaining years in his orbital lab. Though he was always haunted by the failures of his past, he was determined to make things right by building toward the future. Dr. Wells was able to revive many more scientists and engineers than he first expected, thanks to the additional batch of chemicals you stole from the Ministry. Wells never forgot about the human lives that were lost in acquiring these chemicals. The revival project was hard and painful work, but in the end, despite limited resources, over half the Hope's colonists were successfully revived. Even after Wells passed away, the Hope scientists and engineers worked night and day to pull Halcyon from the brink of collapse. Their efforts continue to this day, which may be reason enough for optimism. Dr. Wells laid the groundwork for the project to save the colony, but he would never live to see the fruits of his labor. He passed away a few years later. His work was carried on by the scientists and engineers he revived. Life will never be the same in Halcyon. It is widely agreed that the colony has a chance of stabilizing within a generation, owing to the hard work and determination of the surviving colonists. Recovery is a distant goal, and the path is long and uncertain. But the people of Halcyon carry on, determined as ever. And what about you, the unplanned variable in the history of Halcyon? Long after Wells passed away, you carried on his work with more energy, determination, and brilliance than he could ever muster. The years that followed were hard, but Halcyon survived by the efforts of the Hope's most promising colonists, the greatest of which was you. No one knows what's happened to Earth, and no one knows what the future has in store for Halcyon. All we know for certain is this: the name of the Unreliable and that of its intrepid captain will remain the subject of countless stories for years to come.